Hello, Shelley from Spin Cushions here. I'm going to show you rounds 9 to 12 of the Mayan Crochet blanket. So we'll get a lot of these V shapes done, which is probably the trickiest part of the whole motif. But if you take your time, step by step, you'll be fine, I promise. Okay, so let's get started. So your round 8 should be looking like this. If you're following my changing colours plan, you would have finished off your last colour and you'd be attaching your next colour with a standing front post treble UK or a standing front post double US around a front post stitch of round 8. I wouldn't do the same one, I would do a different one. It just helps to spread the illusion of it all being seamless. Okay, so round 9, we're going to start by doing a front post stitch around the front post stitch below, or your standing stitch if that's what you're doing. Okay, now we are going to do a double crochet UK, single crochet US in the next 3 stitches. Now just don't forget that first one that can get a little bit hidden there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Now you might remember back in the last part we worked some stitches into the back loop only, and that left this little front loop only here in the middle. You can see a little loop there. That's the loop we're going to be using twice in each little repeat. So our repeat starts with a front post stitch, then 3 stitches. Now we're going to do a treble UK WS into that front loop. So here's how you do that. Yarn over and just insert your hook in it, in that little front loop only that's left from behind from before. Oh goodness me, now I'm going to fumble. Don't be concerned about it pulling up like that, it is all fine. Alright, now we're going to go back to the stitches of the previous round, and you can see that there's 3 that are worked into the one stitch. So that first one here is what we want. This one here we've already worked into. If you turn it over, you can see that little line there already worked into that stitch. So we're working into the next 3 stitches of the previous round. Double crochets UK, single crochets US. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to do another treble in that same front loop only, a treble UK WS. So just poke your hook in there, make your stitch as normal, and now we're back to the round before. You should have 3 stitches left before your front post stitch. We're doing a double crochet UK, single crochet US in the next 3 stitches, and that's our little repeat. So you can see we've started our little V shapes. So I'll do the repeat one more time. Start with a front post stitch, treble UK WS, 3 doubles UK, singles US, 1, 2, 3. We'll do a treble into that front loop only, UK, double US. We go back to working in the previous round, these 3 stitches, double UK, single US, 1, 2, 3. Then we do another treble UK WS in that same front loop, then back to this previous round and do 3 doubles UK, singles US. So there you go, just doubles and trebles. It's just the trebles are worked into somewhere different you may not have done before. So I'll continue all the way around and show you what happens next. Okay, I've done that all the way around, so you can see my little V's beginning to form above in the middle of the little wavy shapes. All I need to do now is join with a slip stitch to my first stitch, which is that front post stitch. Okay, now round 10, we'll be doing all trebles UK or all doubles US. It's just where we'll be working them will be a little bit different sometimes, and sometimes there'll be front post stitches. So we're going to start with a front post stitch around the stitch below, treble UKWS. Okay, now we're going to do a stitch in the next 3 stitches. Remember to make sure you don't miss that first one. 1, 2, 3. Now, the next bit you need to concentrate. It's not hard, you just need to remember and read the pattern. We're going to do a front post stitch around this front post stitch below. Then we're going to do a stitch in that same stitch. So we've just worked around it. So now we're going to go back and work into it as well. So there are 2 stitches in this little repeat that we're going to use twice. Then we're going to do a treble UKWS in the next stitch. Then in the next stitch we're going to do a stitch into just the back loop only. That should be the middle stitch between your little V. And we're going to do a stitch in the next stitch. So that's what happens around that. Now we're going to do a stitch in the next stitch. Now we're going to do a front post stitch around the same stitch, which is the front post stitch. And then we're going to do a stitch in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. So these front post stitches from the round before have a stitch worked around them and in them. On the beginning of the repeat we do a stitch in the stitch then around it. At the end we do a stitch in it. Sorry, we do a stitch around it then in it. Then we do a stitch in it and around it. It's not hard, you just need to concentrate. So I'll just do the little repeat once more time. One more time. Front post stitch is our first stitch. Stitch in the next 3. 1, 2, 3. Front post stitch around the next stitch, which is a front post stitch itself. Then we're going to do a stitch in that same stitch. Stitch in the next stitch. Stitch in the back loop only of the next stitch. Leaves that front loop free for us to use later. Stitch in the next 2. So that's that one and that one, which is a front post stitch. And now we do a stitch around that same stitch, the front post stitch. So generally speaking, when you're doing front post stitches, from here on in, they will be around a front post stitch you did from a previous round. We're finishing off this little repeat with a stitch in the next 3 stitches. So there you go. I said a lot of words, but really, it's not that hard. Just follow the instructions, take it step by step, and you'll be fine. So I'll work my way all the way around and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, repeats all done. Just need to do a joiner with a slip stitch. If you're following my colour plan, this is where you'd fasten off this colour and attach your next colour with a standing front post stitch around one of these stitches that comes up from one of the rays. Alright, so that is round 10 done. It should be something relatively flat. It might be a little bit wavy at this point, but don't worry about that. Okay, so again we're going to start with a front post treble UKWS around the stitch below. Now, we need to skip the first stitch. So this one here that hides a bit, we're going to skip it anyway. I'm going to do a double crochet UK single crochet US in the next 2 stitches. 1, 2. We're going to do a front post stitch around the next stitch, which is a front post stitch. So that makes it easy. Then we're going to do a double crochet UK single crochet US in the next stitch. Now we're going to go back to that front loop that was left over here, just like we did before. We're going to use that front loop twice for each repeat. We're going to start another one of our V's now. So we do a treble UKWS in that V. First time you poke your hook in can be a little bit tricky, but as you know, it gets loose enough fairly soon. Then we're going to go back to the round before, and in the next 3 stitches do a double crochet UK single crochet US, the middle one should be the one that we worked into the back loop. Then we're going to do another treble UKWS in that front loop from the previous round, or a couple of rounds before. Then we are going to do a stitch in the next stitch, double crochet UK, single crochet US, then a front post treble UKWS around the next stitch, which is a front post stitch, then a double UK single US in the next 2 stitches. Then we're going to skip that last stitch and start our repeat again. So I'll do it one more time. We start with a front post stitch, skip the first stitch, double UK single US in the next 2, 1, 2, front post treble UK WS around the next stitch, double UK single US in the next stitch, then a treble UK WS in that front loop from a prior round, then a double UK single US in the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, then a treble UK WS in that same front loop again, double UK single US in the next, front post treble UK WS around the next, double UK single US in the next 2. Skip that last stitch and head off again. I will do all of those repeats and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, round 11 all done. You can see we've got 2 V shapes all the way around now. I just need to join with a slip stitch to my first stitch. Alright, jumping again on with round 12. So again, we're going to be doing a front post stitch around the front post stitch below. In this round we're going to be doing all trebles UK, doubles US. Some of them will be front post stitches, one of them will be into a back loop only. So we've done our first front post stitch. We'll do a stitch in the next 2. Oops. 1, 2, a front post stitch around the next one, stitch in the next stitch, front post stitch around the next one, stitch in the next stitch, a stitch in the back loop only of the next stitch, leaving that front loop free for us to use a bit later on, a stitch in the next stitch, front post stitch around the next, stitch in the next, front post stitch around the next, and then a stitch in the next 2, and that is the end of our repeat. So 2 front post, 1 front post, 1 back loop, 1 front post, 1 front post, 2. Do that all the way around and we'll finish off this video. Okay, all of my repeats are done. You can see how these are getting longer now. And I just need to join with a slip stitch to my first stitch. If you're following my changing colours plan, then this is where you cut this one off and start with your new one. And there you have it, rounds 9 to 12. And that's probably the trickiest bits out of the way. Only a little bit more of this to go next time. And then we'll be getting on to changing our octagon into another shape. So I hope you enjoy making that, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.